Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a Kickstarter preview. This one is for Unicorn Fever from Horrible Games. It's a 3 to 5 player betting racing game on, you guessed it, unicorns.
Right, so this is actually a re-implementation, a little bit, of an original game also from the same designer called Horse Fever that came out in 2009. However, they've completely redone the mechanics of the game. It retains some of the same feel that you're betting on these horses, or in this case unicorns, but you're doing it in a much different way.
Yeah, and in fact, you can tell, first things first, this is a prototype, as we always say. We've got some very early components here, but they've got a bunch of really nicely sculpted unicorns here, and a whole mess of tokens that are going to be here on the board, although you can't see it very well because there's so many colors going on here.
Yeah, so make sure you guys go to the Kickstarter page to see all the final components. However, let's talk about the game. The game is structured into 3 particular phases. You have a planning phase, you have a race phase, and then you have an after race phase. This is going to take place for 4 rounds. You're trying to gather glory, not gold. The gold's going to help fund your abilities to bet on the different unicorns, but it's glory that you're after.
Yeah, it's really interesting balance this game strikes between gold and glory, because you want all that glory, those are the victory points, but you need the gold. In fact, you need gold not only to place bets, but also to pay the glory tax at the end of each race, because you're going to have to pay gold for the glory that you take, kind of a catch-up mechanic.
This is a race game that has a lot of different things to consider. You have the movement cards that are going to move each of the unicorns. You don't know what the movement's going to be. However, you're going to have to bet on different unicorns at different times in order to gain that gold, which is going to fuel your ability to gain glory. You have a number of different actions which are represented by these round tokens. These are the actions you're going to be taking in the game. You also have to consider the magic cards you have in your hand. They're going to manipulate the unicorns in different ways. And then all these different contracts. There's 3 different factions that can influence the unicorns. And when you gather these, they stay in front of you and will help you through the course of the game.
Yeah, to those phases, the planning phase is the one where you're going to be doing a lot of the gameplay. The race phase is where you sit back and cross your fingers and hope for the best to some degree. But the planning phase is really the meat and potatoes of the game, so we'll talk about the different actions you can take during the planning phase.
Yeah, so during your turn you have 3 actions, and you're going to take one of them before moving on to the next player. You're going to go around the table 3 times. These actions consist of these discs that you see on the board. There's 5 different sets of them, and they all are going to do very different things. Let's talk about the very first one. Down at the bottom you have the contracts, and there's 3 of the contracts discs that you can use. One of them, if you're the first person to take this, you just gather one of the contracts that are face up. Again, these contracts allow you to do something immediately or give you long-term benefits for the rest of the game. If you're the second player, you get to get a contract as well, but you have to pay 3 gold in order to do so. And if you're the last player, you likewise get a contract, but it's going to cost you 7 gold. So all of these action spaces that you go to, you get a benefit for going to them before the other players.
Yeah, so let's talk about those contract cards for just a second. There's a few different types. Some of them have immediate effects, and some of them have ongoing effects. They lay out in front of you either way. This one, for instance, is going to let me place another $4 from the bank on any bet that I might place. Others are going to have ongoing effects that may give you glory or victory points for achieving certain things during a race.
Let's talk about the next possible action you could take, and that is playing a magic card. There are 2 discs that are associated with this, a 4 and a 3. Again, this is by player order. The first player to go here is going to get the better of the 2 actions. Each player is going to have 5 cards in their hand that are considered magic cards. These cards are played to the bottom row of each one of these horses. It's up to you on where you want to place them. All of these cards are going to influence those unicorns during the race, and they're all played face down, so you never know what other players are placing down there until the race actually happens.
Yeah, these are going to also do a number of different things. They might help a unicorn start a little ahead in the race. It might help a unicorn go further past the finish line in order to break some ties. A number of different things that are going to affect the race. And like Jeremy said, they're played face down until they're revealed right before the race.
The next possible thing you can do is to take gold and play magic cards. This is the 3rd action space you could go to. If you're the first player, you also gain the first player marker, 10 gold, and you get to play one of those magic cards instead of 4 or 3. The second player down gets the same, but they don't get the first player marker. And this is one of the first places in the game too. All these top rows have a benefit, even if the tiles have been taken. In this case, you just get 10 gold.
Yeah, gold's going to be important. That is one of the few places that you can go to in a basic way to get more gold. Of course, the other way, and the last action space that we're going to talk about, is to get gold through placing bets and winning. Now, the bets are these 2 stacks of tokens right here, and there's a couple different types of bets you can make. You can place a bet to win, or you can choose one of these tokens and do either place a bet to win or place to show. When you place to win, you're going to take the topmost token from that unicorn's banner. You're going to place that in front of you along with the betting action token that you take. Then you're going to take any amount of money you want and place it on top of that. That is your bet. Now, depending on what token you took here, for instance, I took the very first place to win token, I'm also going to take 2 glory from the supply and place it on there as well. If I end up winning with that horse, I'm going to get that glory as well as the payout. The payout's related to the odds here in the odds chart.
Instead of taking one of these place to wins, you can also take one of these tiles. This is also a place to win, but it's also a place to show, gaining you access to one of the bottom 2 tiles on one of the horses. You're simply going to take that and place it on there and also make a bet with the gold that you have. Likewise, you also get to play magic cards. So there's a variety of different areas in the game in order to place those magic cards. Now, the difference between placing to win and placing to show is actually just the amount of money that you receive from the payouts. If you place to win, you're receiving a multiplier according to the odds of that particular unicorn. When you place to show, you're just doubling the amount of money that you win if that unicorn shows in either first, second, or third place.
And this, again, is one of those places where if all of the tokens are gone, you can still just place a bet, either to win or show, but you're not going to get any of those extra benefits from the tokens as well. Those are all of the actions you can take during the planning phase. And like we said, it's going to go around the table, so you're going to be able to take any 3 of those during the planning phase, and then it's time for the race.
All right, so the race begins, and the very first thing that you have to do is reveal all of the magic cards that have been played below the 6 different unicorns. We have one showing face up right here, which is simply going to show something that can modify that unicorn starting position, or something that can modify maybe the sprint dice that come up in the game, or other conditions like the finish line. All of those are going to be revealed at once, and all of them are going to take place according to that particular magic card.
Yeah, and many of those might cancel each other out. You actually remove those and leave the other ones there. But like Jeremy said, those are going to either positively or negatively affect each unicorn. The next thing you do is you let the race begin. You're going to flip over these movement cards, and you're going to look at the odds chart and move each unicorn according to this movement card along with the odds chart. After you've moved all the unicorns according to that card, you're going to roll the sprint dice. The sprint dice have one of each unicorn reflected on that. When you roll them up, you're going to simply move those unicorn an extra space. Now, keep in mind, the magic cards, there are some that will affect this. So, for instance, you might roll a red and move the red, but if there's a card underneath that that says on a sprint it's going to get 1 less, it's going to remove that card and the unicorn won't move.
Now, it's important to realize that there's a fair degree of strategy in the game when you consider these movement cards and the positioning of the unicorn odds tokens on this chart. The higher numbers are always on top with the lower numbers on the bottom, so when you place your bets, keep that in mind.
The last thing you're going to do there is check to see if any of the unicorns have crossed the finish line. When they do, you just put them on the podium. If they haven't all crossed the finish line, you're going to keep doing this. A movement card followed by the sprint dice until all of the unicorns have placed right up here alongside of the odds chart. That's when you're going to move to the after race.
During the after race, you're actually going to do a payout for each of these particular unicorns according to where they place on that chart. Everyone's going to announce the bets that they made on which unicorns they made those bets. You're going to get a multiplier only if you did a top bet on each of these particular unicorns. So, for example, say I bet 5 on orange, and orange has a 1 payout, I just get $5 from that. However, if you bet 5 on a purple and it placed in first place, you're going to get 30 back from that.
So you can already see, if you're able to manipulate the game such that you can bet on one of the unicorns with the better payouts and get them to place higher, that's how you're going to get the gold you need to win the game.
Also, each of the players is going to have a payout for their own personal horse. Each player is going to have one of these banners at the start of the game. This is a horse that you're always going to get a payout for as long as they show. In this case, if blue shows, I get 6, 4, or 2 coins according to if they place first, second, or third. Plus, you have to consider glory.
Yes, glory is going to come with any of the bets that you placed and won with. In fact, if you placed to win, you're going to get 5 glory plus any glory that you got from the action token that you used. And placing early to show is going to get you 3, placing late to show is going to get you 2. Unfortunately, with all that glory comes the glory tax. At this point, all the players are going to pay gold equal to the amount of glory that they currently have. So this is the glory that you just received for that race and any prior races, because there's a total of 4 throughout the game.
Now, if you can't pay that, you have to borrow from the elf mob. Yes, I said elf mob. Each of these Elf Mob cards is going to allow you to acquire 20 gold. However, at the end of the game, you have to pay back 25 gold to the Elf Mob for each one of these cards that you have. If you're unable to pay this back at the end of the game, and even if you have more glory than the other players, a player with a single piece of gold with no Elf Mob cards is going to win the game.
So now it comes time to adjust the odds table. You're going to look at how all of the unicorns placed and adjust their tokens up or down depending on where they are relative to their token. So for instance, orange placed first and it was expected to place first, so that's not going to move. But if yellow had placed higher than its yellow token, the yellow token is going to move 1 up, thereby making it so that some of these tokens might share some of these odd spaces, making the next race a little bit more interesting.
3 more things are going to happen at the end of the round. Number 1, you're going to refill all the contracts at the bottom of the board. You're going to remove all the magic cards that were played at that round. And then finally, one of the unicorns is going to go into fever mode, according to the lowest odds one on the board. So in this case, purple is going to flip over to their fever mode. On the back side of these cards, they all have special abilities according to that particular unicorn.
And that's going to happen at the end of every race. A different unicorn might go into fever mode, and in fact, some might be in fever mode together if there's a tie.
And finally, you're going to move the race token onto the next section. There's 4 races in the game. At the end of the game, the player with the most glory is going to win. 20 gold can be converted into a single glory. And remember, if you have any of those Elf Mob cards, you have to pay them back. If you have any of those left over and you're tied with another player, that other player is going to win. So a single Elf Mob card could put you out of contention for the entire game.
Yeah, that brings us back to that balance between glory and gold. So you got to make sure you have the amount of gold you need to pay off those elves for sure at the end of the game.
So that is Unicorn Fever. It is a 3 to 5 player game from Horrible Games. If you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do. And we will catch you guys next time.